And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Space and Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, May 15th, 8 EST at the very least when you are going to be watching this. And thank you for joining me for another episode of the Cinemasters Reviews, our first pre-recorded episode. I am your host, the Cinemaster, Payson Johnson. We got an exciting show tonight. We are going to be reviewing a new Robert Rodriguez film starring Ben Affleck called Hypnotic, as well as a new biopic about the making of a product. We seem to be getting a lot of those recently, called Blackberry. You might be asking yourself, why is this one pre-recorded? Well, it's because I wanted to get a special guest to talk about a certain Robert Rodriguez film. And that guest comes from all the way over the world. I'm talking about the one, the only, the Kangaroo Man himself, Jake Marangoni. Jake, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It was funny because when you had the introduction, you said it's Monday 15th. And I'm like, well, that is true for me right now. So I find that to be pretty refreshing to hear the actual date and time relatively to where I'm recording this. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, I unfortunately can't do your regular scheduled time. So it's glad that you were able to do this for me. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Here at the Cinemasters Reviews, I always try to keep it live. I think it just makes for a more fun show. But at the same time, I want certain people on. Kelly is, of course, one of the founders of the video store. And you and Michael are some of our favorite people in this community. So
we had our own shows at some point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was willing to compromise for this. But Jake, I just say we jump right into the main show tonight. And for our first review, Hypnotic, directed by Robert Rodriguez. This is the new film from the everyone's favorite do-it-yourself master. This one, Ben Affleck plays a law enforcement agent who has recently lost his daughter via kidnapping. One day when he is still grieving and trying to find his daughter, a bank heist begins. And as this bank heist starts to happen, he realizes that the person robbing the bank might have superpowers, if you will, and certain things go on from there. As Ben Affleck slowly starts to journey and discover more things about himself, he realizes, oh dang, there are psychics out there, and they cannot control my mind, so I am special. Jake, before we get into this review, why don't you tell people what are your thoughts on Robert Rodriguez's filmography? Don't go like just like as a whole.
Yeah, I'm quite a fan, I guess, of more the idea behind him than I guess majority of his movies. Like Rodriguez is the guy who we both grew up in the early 2000s. We watched Spy Kids and Sharp Boy and Love Girl, and those are at least for me, prominent films of my childhood. And I recently watched 3D a couple weeks ago, and that was a really fun experience to rewatch that. But it's just he's one of those guys where I just like the idea of he can direct, write, shoot, edit. Some people do the music for. Sometimes he'll do the visual effects. He is one of those just do it yourself sort of DIY kind of filmmakers, and so I didn't think that was going to be the case for Hypnotic. I just thought this looked like a director for hire sort of situation. But looking at beforehand what he does, he is the same situation of shoots his movie, edits it. He has his son do the music. It's one of those things where I'm like, how does he keep doing this? I do love Rodriguez, yeah.
I have not seen as many Rodriguez films as I would have liked to, but like you, I think when I think about his filmography, I like the idea of Robert Rodriguez and his mentality more than maybe I like his films as a whole. Like you, I grew up with the Spy Kids films and The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl. My mom still gives me crap saying that The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl is the worst movie I ever made her go to, minus Super Baby Geniuses 2. So, Mom, if you are watching, I do apologize for that. But like you, I still have a lot of fun with that movie. Minus is a top-tier villain of all time. But yeah, I really love From Dusk Till Dawn. I was one of those weirdos that really got into Alita Battle Angel. That's
it's a
my
fantastic film.
yeah, oh yeah,
So
movie
fun.
kicks ass. But yeah, going into this movie, when I saw the trailers, I was like, oh, a new Rodriguez movie is coming out. I hope it gives me some of that flair. From Dusk Till Dawn, I also really love.
Amarashi, so
Yeah.
I think you already said From Dusk Till Dawn.
Sorry. Yeah. So I was like, I really hope we get like just a nice, solid, like fun action movie from Rodriguez. And watching this movie, I know he obviously directed it. He had his son composed it. He wrote it. Didn't really feel like a Rodriguez movie, in my opinion. This kind of felt like it could have been directed by anyone. I'll be honest, I was kind of let down by this movie. I just kind of the shortest thoughts I could say is, man, a movie with this type of premise should not be this boring.
That was my first takeaway right after leaving the cinema was this is a great concept.
Yes.
And it is executed in the most stale, white bread way I think I could imagine it to be. It is more interested in tricking the audience members than actually like trying to tell like an actual interesting story or with interesting characters. And that is sort of the letdown because, like you said, this does not feel like a Rodriguez film. I was trying to, as I was watching the movie, I'm trying to look at the shots or the edits or just anything that makes me go, this is a Rodriguez type film. But it's just so weird. Like if you got rid of and just put, fucking Alan Smithy, just not promote that it is. Yeah. You don't advertise the movie with Rodriguez or even just it doesn't change anything as far as what it would look like. It still feels like someone it doesn't feel like it's Robert Rodriguez, and that was sort of just the big letdown. It is so weird though, this movie.
Yeah, like I want to tackle what you said earlier, and I do think the best thing this movie has going for is the concept is really cool. Very early on in the movie, we learn that there are a group of psychics out there that have the ability to essentially hypnotize certain individuals to do their bidding. And that is what the bad guys in this movie are doing. But we also learn that Ben Affleck's character has the ability to essentially, his mind has a block on the hypnosis where it just does not work for him. So his cells and his genes are considered way more special than anyone else. And I love this world that it sets up, and I wish it explored it more. But I think that kind of goes into the biggest, my biggest complaint with the movie, where I never felt like I got to discover this world, because half of this movie from the 90-minute runtime is just characters explaining what is going on. Like you never get to, like, see anything really cool in action. It's just exposition dump. And at a point, I'm like, can we have some fun with this concept? Jake, what did you think about the concept and just like the world building as a whole?
I think I think the best part of the movie is the first 25-30 minutes when it actually like starts to set everything up from the characters and the premise. That beginning bank heist I thought was done somewhat well, and the way they set up William Fichtner and his ability to manipulate minds and power of persuasion, I thought was really cool. When he's on the park bench with the lady and he's just like, it's really hot out day today, and just like so like hot, and then she starts just becoming so that's that manipulation of like, oh, it is really hot. I thought was something I wish they explored more of as an idea, and less of just I'm just going to make people do whatever I want through mind control. I thought the persuasion of that would have been really cool. But it's just like, it's one of those things where I feel like he had the twists and turns as an idea first, and then it was like, how do I get to that sort of point? But yeah, it's one of those things where I don't really know what the world is. Like, it tries to explain it, and the exposition is the worst part. Is part of the problem with this movie. But I also am someone who's like, you can do exposition well if it's if you're invested by it. Like I love Inception. I'm sure you're in the same boat as me. And and even Tenet to a certain degree, I love when they just explain stuff, and I'm just like so into what's going on. But when it is done in this movie, I'm just like I have more questions than I do answers. I want to know what is actually going. Like it makes me question the logic of the film, which is a bad thing.
Arrival is one of my favorite movies of the 2010s, and that movie is very high on exposition. You can do that well, and you can keep people invested in it, but I think there comes a point where you just got to let your movie be like, okay, this is the world we set up. We're now going to live in that world, and this movie never wants to do that because it's constantly trying to one-up itself in terms of the twists as it goes along. Everything I told you about, like, the things he discovers, this is a 90-minute movie. You make a huge discovery, like, 45 minutes in, and I'll be honest, I didn't really see it coming, but I think the issue is when you have a big reveal like that, I am now going to be doubting every single thing going forward, and for a movie like this, with how it handles itself in the final act, that's not a good thing, and that just kind of keeps me less invested. Like I don't want to feel like I'm smarter than a movie, but this movie made me feel like I was smarter than the movie. Jake, did you kind of have that similar feeling?
So I think it's, I mean, I do know exactly what you're talking about when you say like the shift, the twist, the big twist, I would say. It's more like an hour into the movie. Like that is sort of a problem with the twist, is that it reshapes the entire film, and that can be good if it's executed properly, but it is not, because it's way too interested in its exposition dump. But when it's like an hour in and you have 30 minutes left, you're now just like, what is going to happen from here? It feels sort of like the movie keeps trying to one-up you. And I thought about this. It's like this movie is made for people who don't watch movies. Because when like us, like we're obviously, there's something wrong with our brains because we love too much movies and know too much about movies. We obviously know the twist, or you can obviously predict what sort of twists and turns. And I know you said that you didn't really. It is one of those things where like the twist comes out of almost nowhere. You wouldn't really assume. So that's that. And I didn't really get like 95%. The only thing I predicted was the realization of Ben Affleck's character, his past. I sort of put 2 and 2 together, like, okay, that would only make sense if this had happened, or this was because of this. But outside of that, I was not expecting the revelation, and it is just it just comes out of nowhere where you would not expect it. And it also just doesn't make the movie better. I think that's a massive problem with the twist, is that it doesn't make the film any more better, you know?
Yeah. And I really think an issue with this twist coming an hour in is, okay, like one of the really nice things about this movie is it is 90 minutes and you don't feel it. Like I'm not sure if you can agree. The movie felt like a breeze. Like when the movie was ending, I was like, wait, we're ending? Really already?
Like I found the pacing like not particularly great.
No, but that's
moments where, I mean, the best thing it does is that it's like 90 minutes long. It's not like, it's not a long movie. It's not a long commitment. But I did feel at moments where I was just like, all right, just please, can we just keep moving on? It's just the pacing I thought was not particularly great for this.
No, yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to get at. Where like I don't think the pacing is great, because this type of twist is something you would expect like 40 or 50%, maybe 50% at most in the movie. But the fact that it comes in like 2/3 of the way done, like it's one of those things that recontextualizes the entire movie, but then the movie doesn't really have much to contextualize again, and it sort of leaves you with kind of an empty feeling towards the end.
Well, because we also should mention this isn't the only twist, because it's like because you have like obviously throughout a movie you have revelations or realizations of like what the movie is. Like I think a big one is The Matrix. Like when Neo leaves the Matrix, you realize what's going on, and that's a good 30-35 minutes into the movie. With Hypnotic, similarly in structure, it is, William Fichtner can manipulate people's minds, and that's like, okay, so this is what the movie's going for. The next thing is a massive twist, which is what we're talking about with, well, that's an hour into it, where it goes, wait, everything is completely different now. but then that's not the only thing that changes everything. There's another twist that changes everything, and then another twist after that. And then, not to go too much into spoiler, but then the end credits
right at the end
also changes everything, and you just go, so then what is the point?
Yeah. And the issue with these twists, once again, is whenever they happened, I felt like I was supposed to get them, but I didn't until the characters were like, here's what's going on. And I was like, oh, okay. And it just sort of like, when that happens, it's very hard to get invested as an audience member watching those types of movies. To sort of pivot away to some other elements of the film, I kind of want to talk about the cast. I thought the cast was fine as a whole. Like, I don't really think there was like a bad performance per se. I do think the best performance was probably William Fichtner for me, mainly because he always just has a blast with these types of villain roles.
He has a really good presence as well. Like, he always brings it his A game, no matter what movie he's in. Fichtner's a pro as well. Like, he's a good. I don't know if he's like a character actor, but like he's just one of those guys that you know from 1,000 different movies. Like when he shows up at the beginning of Dark Knight or some stuff like that. It's just like it's really cool that he can do stuff like that. I did not care for Affleck, I must say. I thought he was particularly one note. Because I guess this isn't too much a spoil. We've sort of talked about the basic premise, but when I'm trying to not spoil much, but when he has a flashback of him and his daughter before his daughter goes missing, I'm supposed to get the idea that he was happy as a family man, but you never really see that from Affleck, and I guess that is just his demeanor. That's just his cadence. That's who he is at this moment. Where I like Affleck as an actor and a person, just because it's like I feels like he has massive ups and downs throughout his career, and I just wanted to see him show just a lot more positive emotions of that he's actually happy that he has a child. But he is sort of very similar when he is in the therapy scene talking about it through the flashback, and he just looks like he's defeated. And that was sort of my idea of him throughout the entire film. That's just Affleck at this point.
When I think about Ben Affleck, I think Affleck is best as an actor, and this is not like the most unpopular opinion. I think he's best as an actor when you don't like him. Like when you're not supposed to be on his side.
He's great in The Last Duel. I believe that's one of the big ones you're talking about. He's really great in that. That's like such a character that it's great to see him actually play something that's so different from like what else that the other characters he's played. Obviously, Gone Girl. Gone Girl is good. Gone Girl plays with the character, the knowing of it being Ben Affleck, and I think that's to one of the core strengths of that movie. But like even something like Argo, I think he's decent in Argo. He works for the lead of that movie. There are a couple of other ones that I'm blanking on at the moment, but like
he's a total character in the movie, but I thought he was great in Air that came out like a month ago. So
I still haven't seen it, but I know I've heard good things about it and that. But also Alice Braga, what do you think of her?
I thought she was I thought she was fine. I didn't really think she was given the most exciting stuff to work with. At the same time, I don't think she really elevated any of it. So I think there's just that issue with like, do I hold that as a fault to saying, oh, you didn't have the good material, so I can't really fault you, but at the same time, there are certain actors that can absolutely get above that bad material. Off the top of my head, I weirdly think of Stanley Tucci in The Terminal, where like that's a horribly written role, but like every time he comes on screen, I kind of love it.
The Tucci adds a lot to that to the movie and the character. No, I think that's a good point, and similar to Fichtner, like it's just the way they play the character or just their presence just makes the movie a little bit more interesting. They elevate it. I like Alice Braga, but she just doesn't do that with this movie. I think she's just on a different tone or a different sort of energy with the rest of the movies, and even compared to Fichtner, who I think just like knows sort of what line to cross or to be on, and I don't think Braga, as much as I like her in other films, just doesn't really have that.
I think Rodriguez has a really great talent for making action look really, really cool in his movies. I'm not sure if he forgot to do that here because Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Outside of that first heist, which like has some weird moments, like there is one moment where a woman takes her shirt off just to get her shirt off, if we're being honest. But like other than that, it's a really really cool heist. But like aside from that, I think the action was kind of bland in this movie. What did you think about the action, Jake?
I think it's got ideas that it tries to. It's just. I think it's all about the execution. There's that one motorcycle chase, where things start to become Inception-y, and you can tell that that's obviously was like the blueprint of what they wanted to do with that scene. I just don't. It's like it's one of those things where it's like as I'm trying to think of the movie and or think of that scene, I don't really remember specific shots and the layouts, and that's a problem. Like. When I look back at Inception, even I've seen maybe hundreds of times at this point, but I remember moments. I remember the ideas from the first viewing of it, like the hallway scene. You've got the van chase. You've got the attacking the fortress in the snow. The mountain.
Yeah.
There's just ideas that you can just remember and how it plays out. But when it comes to Hypnotic and its action scenes, I'm just like, oh yeah, all it is just him going shoot yourself and then shoot at him and point the gun and. There's a point where I just wasn't invested with the action. I think it was during that motorcycle chase where I don't care. And that's a problem with what's going on with the movie.
Discount Inception is really kind of an unfortunate way to describe this movie, but there are very clear scenes in this movie where you have the whole world flipping on itself, where you can clearly tell, okay, it's trying to just emulate that, but it's not doing it in a successful way.
There's that one chase in like the trains. I thought it was actually somewhat okay. At least it was better than other scenes or other action scenes in the film. But just the idea of because there's that point where it's like the interstellar ship at the end when he's seeing like the floor he's seeing the trains on the sky and he's just like sort of lost. But like sort of that manipulation of getting him in a hole or like getting him trapped, I thought was done okay. It could have been done better, but compared to the rest of the movie, it could have been done worse. So that's something I'm going to go, you know what, that was okay. Prop A for effort in that aspect.
No, yeah, that's absolutely fair. Before we head out on our final rating, I just want to there's one last major point I want to tackle with you. Did you stay till after the credits with this movie?
I did, yes.
One of the weakest and worst attempts at a sequel bait.
I can't believe they did that. Because it's so. I mean, obviously not to go into spoilers, but it does I'm trying to think of another movie that does this. Sort of like have the credits play, but also sort of just have 5-second shots throughout.
Last year's Barbarian did that.
What movie?
Barbarian.
Yes, Barbarian. Yes, yeah, Barbarian. I think that does it well. I was weirdly thinking of The Thing, the remake from 2011, because that ending is basically just setting up the Carpenter's The Thing. But it is so weird because it's like, okay, here's some shots of oh, this is how it actually ends. But then it is the sequel bait Marvel. Yeah. Hell, there's going to be another one, which I'm still trying to process. What is that? Just Rodriguez? We're going to try and make a new franchise, or do you think that was a studio thing? Can we have sort of set up for another one?
Well, you think about how Alita ends, and is this just Rodriguez's new thing? Because God love Alita, that movie ends in one of the most biggest sequel bait ways I think I've ever seen in a movie.
I mean, by casting Edward Norton as the Thanos, Nova villain, and you see him for 2 shots, it's definitely trying to set up that. But also in that movie's defense, that's based on a manga. It's based on. There's so much material. Obviously, this was from the beginning. I don't know if I believe that from Hypnotic. Also, the fact that this movie just sort of got dumped and there's absolutely no advertisement whatsoever for this movie. For a movie with a $65 million budget, that's crazy that this movie just got thrown into the beginning of May. One of those situations where they tried to bury it with Guardians. I guess I don't know. What exactly was their thought process?
I have always said that the movie that comes out the second week of the summer after that big MCU movie is essentially destined to get buried. Like last year was the Firestarter remake, if you remember that one. Yeah, usually when a movie like that is just thrown out here, like not always you'll hear in my next review, there was a very good movie that came out this weekend, but
I'm upset I didn't get to talk about the good movie.
but yeah, this one just didn't do it for me, unfortunately.
I would like to just bring up one more thing that we haven't talked about. Speaking of actors, but Jackie O'Haley in his scene forgot. I don't think I even remembered he was going to be in the movie, but I thought he's on that same level of Fichtner, of just he can deliver exposition. Like he does it well. I think he does it really well because he's talking about like something that's in the past or like what the characters are after and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, okay, I'm invested sort of slightly by this movie now more because of what he is saying and how he's saying it. It's funny that him and Fichtner are pretty similar as far as what this movie is going for because of, well, not to go too much into the spoiler, but the revelation I thought was pretty good in that scene. I was just like, oh, okay. But nah, it's I thought he was at least fun. I just can't believe he showed up for like 5 minutes, not even.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Oscars, best cameo nominee, Jackie Earle Haley, Hypnotic. But yeah, absolutely. Jake, here at the video store, here at Cinemaster's Reviews, we review movies on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes. 0 videotapes is awful, just a truly abysmal experience. It gives you pain to literally think about the movie. It was so bad and just left a scorn on you. And it's an insult to cinema. And 10 is a wonderful film. It is if not a masterpiece, it is a near masterpiece, one that you would recommend to anyone, and one that reminds you why you love movies in the first place. Jake, on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, what would you give this movie?
I've got to give it 10 videotapes because I'm just kidding. No, I would never do that. This movie sucked. I have to give it. I still feel like I'm being generous with this, but I'm going to give it 4 videotapes out of 10. I found at least some of it to be well made. I'm trying to think of like on a scale of like it tried. I like Rodriguez still enough to watch the movie and at least give it my attention. There are some ideas. I do like the premise. It is just done in the most mindfuckery way where I'm not invested by the characters or the story, and I don't know why that was the choice, but here we are with that choice being made.
Yeah, I'm teetering between 2 scores. Yeah, I think I know where I'm going to go. It doesn't quite get to 4 for me. I'm actually going to give it 3.5. This movie really, really didn't work for me. Yeah, like you said, I think the most this movie has is an awesome premise, and I wish a better movie would have been made with this type of premise. It hurts me to dissuade people from going to see a Rodriguez movie in theaters, but like there's really no reason to go see this movie. If you find it on cable, it's really not even gonna do anything that special for you. Yeah, this one does not get a recommendation. I think it's pretty bad.
I just really hope that now Rodriguez is getting all that shit out of his system. He can now focus on Aelita Part 2. Like I know John Lando, producer, recently said that like that is like coming soon. That is something that they're working on. So hopefully Rodriguez can come back and team up with Cameron and make a Part 2 because that would be great.
No, absolutely. Well, we are in the halfway point of this show. Usually I would open up some comments. Usually I would ask you some questions. But you know what? I'm going to surprise you, Jake. Guess what? For the next 2 to 3 minutes, this is a Code Lyoko show. Let's go. Yo, so I was in a chat with this man, and I discovered that, like me, he has a love for a certain early 2000s French cartoon called Code Lyoko. Jake, tell the world why Code Lyoko is a badass show.
I don't even know how I even started. This is because we're in different countries. We have different network channels. But when I was in primary school, you're getting ready for school and you're watching, for me in Australia, Channel 10. In that 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock time, you've got the kids shows that play before you get ready for school, and during 7:30 to 8, it would be Code Lyoko. Every morning from Monday to Friday, and every time we'd get ready for work, get ready for school. An episode would be on, and I remember. I mean, the first episode I watched was the pilot when Xana. Oh, I honestly was watching the show because it's on Netflix. I was watching it a few months ago, and I just completely blanked on that.
Xana takes now. I am buying a VPN now. It's not on Netflix here, but
oh wow, yeah. Well, Xana is like a virus that takes over a teddy bear in that opening pilot, the opening episode. But it's basically just I said it in the chat, but it's French teenage Matrix.
It's awesome.
Is what it is. And it's cool. I mean, I like the ideas, and like it's traditional 2D animation in the real world, and then it's the computer generated 3D in the world of Lyoko. And it's got some good ideas. I mean, I don't know. It's like one of those things where it's very much like this is the problem for this episode, and the next one it's another problem, and it's the same. It has a very almost boring, but just very like obvious structure of this is happening, and now we have to stop this, and it happens in the same way, and it's like one of those things that just keeps. But I mean, it's fun. Like I like the characters. I've always liked that Team Lyoko sort of them when it's the four of them. I know in season 2 when what's her name, Aelita was sort of released from Lyoko. That they have a really good dynamic, and it's just some good ideas. I always like just the idea of like going to a virtual world, and I was a big fan of swords and samurais as a kid, so I always liked Ulrich and his samurai getup, and also I sort of like secretly stand for him and Yumi.
Oh, absolutely!
throughout the show.
In later seasons when William comes in and William
and it becomes that love triangle.
I hated William. I was like, you go away. Ulrich and Yumi deserve to be together. Yumi secretly loves Ulrich too, but she's not obvious about it like Ulrich.
And there are certain episodes where I'm just like, it's so frustrating because they like.
So
Ulrich is either an idiot because Yumi just doesn't want to take the chance, but it's just oh my god. But yeah, I remember when William is, I think he's season 3. I think he's I think he shows up in season 2, but then he becomes more integral in season 3. But yeah, but yeah, chicks dig bad boys, I guess. But it's a fun show. It's fun. I never like finished it, unfortunately, but I did watch. They did have that live action. Evolution, I think is what it's called. I saw the first episode, and I was like, yeah, I don't need to continue.
Fair.
The acting is bad. It is so bad.
Yeah, I never really gave that show a chance, but no, I loved the original Code Lyoko. It's one of those things where like you said, it has a very like formulaic TV show structure, especially in those first 2 seasons. But like I think it's just the concept and the characters really just carried it over. I loved Odd. Odd was my boy. Ultimate slacker that shot darts.
Shoot arrows. Yeah, like I really like the music. If I'm talking like actual positives, I thought the music's pretty good. That theme, that
underrated.
Some of the lyrics isn't the greatest. Make evil go away is always funny to me.
Go away. It's so good.
It's so bad that part, but K-Lurk is fun to watch still.
Jake, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm glad to finally be on.
Absolutely, and thank you for
talking. It was to talk so terrible Robert Rodriguez film.
I'm so sorry. We are definitely going to get you on later throughout the summer or throughout 2023. Whenever you want to get on, just give me a message and I'll see if I can make it work. But other than that, have a great night.
Thanks, man. See ya.
See ya. Thank you once again, Jake, for joining me. But we are going to get right into our second review of the night, Blackberry. If I can just adjust my camera. Still a little blurry. So sorry, guys. Gotta love pre-recorded videos. There we go. Blackberry is the second movie we are going to be reviewing this week, directed by Matt Johnson. This chronicles the story of the creation of the first Blackberry phone and all of the struggles and weird sort of like darkly comedic hijinks that went in to the creation of that device, and how it started out as a revolutionary cell phone till now where the phone is basically obsolete because it was kind of destroyed by Apple, as the film sort of shows. Something I really love about this movie is, so yeah, I'll just tell you guys right off the bat. I think this is a really, really good movie and a really, really interesting movie. We've had a ton of interesting movies about the corporate side of certain products. I think of Air, which came out earlier this year, which I absolutely adored. Tetris, which came out on Apple TV Plus, talks about the making of the Tetris video game. I thought was good, not excellent, but I did think it was an enjoyable time. And yeah, I think the thing I love about this one is this one has like a much smaller feeling to it. Like you see the beginning of the Blackberry phone, of it's just being made by these guys in this college dorm room up in Waterloo, Canada, and you have this one guy who just got fired from another company, played by Glenn Howerton, who is excellent. Played by Glenn Howerton, who is excellent in this film. I'll get more into him, and how he sort of takes these kind of like college slackers and college nerds and makes them into tough workers, but also they never really lose their like nerdy sense of themselves, which as the movie shows kind of was the reason why the phone didn't really succeed at the end of the day, because none of these guys really had that like killer instinct when it came to being great businessmen. Yeah, something I also really, really love about this movie is it jumps around from time period to time period. The movie begins in 1996, and then it ends in 2009. And as the film slowly progresses more and more, the quality of the film begins to change. So, like, it begins, the movie begins, it feels like you're watching, like, a grimy, like, 90s film. And by the end, it feels like you're watching a pretty, fairly typical Studio 2000s film. And to the point where like it makes you realize, oh, the lower quality at the beginning was a choice, and it wasn't a fault with the movie. Like, I'll be honest, the beginning of this movie I was like, okay, I'm enjoying this, but this looks like it was shot on a potato. And I was asking myself, like, is this purposeful? And as the movie begins to keep going on, I realized, oh, this definitely has a purpose. This definitely is there for a reason. To get into the cast a little, I think Jay Baruchel is great as the lead of Mike Lazardis. He's the guy who essentially has the idea for the Blackberry to put a keyboard on a phone, so that way you can both call people and email people. Jay Baruchel's always great at playing these like nerdy characters, and I love how he plays this guy as like a very meek, very like uncomfortable guy. Not always the best thing about Jay Baruchel in this movie is he always feels out of place. And I think that's the best thing about the character, is this is a guy that always felt nervous. He always felt like he had something to prove, and he never felt like he could do that. And I think that's and I think Baruchel's really good at playing that type of character. Matthew Johnson is also great as his best friend of Douglas Freegan. This guy is like the stereotypical stoner nerd guy. Like, he's always wearing like a headband. He always has like a sleeveless shirt, but he just has this presence. Matthew Johnson also directed the movie, which I think is awesome. I actually didn't know that walking in, but seeing that I was like, oh, that's really cool. And he gave himself a really fun character to play in Douglas Freegan. You can see the slowly as the movie begins to go on, you see the sort of butting heads of him and Mike a little bit. But yeah, the all-star and MVP of this movie is Glenn Howerton as Jim Basile, who the movie begins and he's kind of like let go from his old position, and he's just kind of desperate to get back into this like really high power position. And he tells them, hey, if you make me CEO, you won't regret it. And he he is both really good at playing this like really reserved character that you can tell has a lot of darkness in him, and also has the ability to snap at a moment's notice. I'm a big fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and Glenn Howerton in that show plays one of the most evil and despicable people in a funny way in Dennis Reynolds, and he takes a lot of that energy from that show and puts it into this character of Jim. Whenever he's on screen, you are always captivated. You're always entertained by everything he does. A lot of the laughs, which there are a ton of laughs in this film, come from him. Whenever he refers to himself as the CEO, you'll have just either Jay Baruchel or Matthew Johnson in the back saying, "Well, he's the co-CEO," and you get a lot of laughs from that. There's an early on scene where Glenn Howerton's character and Jay Baruchel's character are going into a meeting to essentially pitch the BlackBerry for the first time, and you can see Jay Baruchel's character like struggling to keep up with his words, and you just see Glenn Howerton in the corner like, this guy's gonna mess it up. This guy's gonna mess it up, and it's just that subtle Howertonness that you just Howardness. I just made up a term, but it's that subtle nature that he brings as an actor that really just makes you laugh because you know this guy is absolutely hating everything he is looking at, and he is going to snap at a moment's notice. And I think that's really, really entertaining. Something I did find a bit annoying at the start of the movie is it tries to excessively remind you what time period it's in. A lot of movies that are usually set in either like the 80s or the 90s will do this by just constantly shoving different references or certain music choices. Really good soundtrack, by the way, with this movie. Just to really like remind you, like, hey, check it out. We're in the 90s, and this movie does this at the beginning. But it also does that with the early 2000s to really show, like, hey, we're in the early 2000s. Check it out. This is a cool time. And on the one hand, it definitely does get a little aggravating at points. But at the same time, considering how often this movie does time jump, I think this movie jumps into the future about 4 different times. Because you see 96, 2003, 2007, and a little bit at the end towards 2009. So it jumps 3 times actually to 4 different time periods. I understand why it was very adamant at trying to get you to realize, hey, this is where we are, not only in the history of BlackBerry, but also in the history of America. This is what was going on in our country at this point, at least in terms of pop culture. So it's still a little annoying, but I do excuse it a bit. It gets surprisingly thrilling towards the end. This isn't really a spoiler because it's true history, but in the 2007 segment, it's sort of focusing on the month before the release of the iPhone. And anyone that knows, obviously, what the iPhone is, you know that it kind of changed how the world viewed cell phones. And while this is happening, all the main characters are kind of like sweating and just completely like, guys, we are screwed if this thing is released to the public, and we don't have our deal still in place. And so the entire third act of this movie is them trying to keep their deal with Verizon and with and to try and stall Singular and AT&T from taking the deal with Apple to create the iPhone. And seeing where that happens, you see that like certain parts earlier in the movie, they were doing some shady stuff to get the BlackBerry to be as technologically advanced as it was, and see as all this stuff slowly starts crashing down. It weirdly feels like, and I've heard this comparison from a few different people, it kind of feels like The Social Network, if The Social Network wasn't such a prestige studio movie and didn't have like that gloss to it. And I love The Social Network. This movie is not as good as The Social Network, but The Social Network definitely has a little bit of gloss to it. It definitely has a little bit of like shine to it. This movie has that unpolishedness to it, and I think that's what makes it distinct. I think that's what makes it fun to watch, and it adds a little bit of a gritty feel to it. Maybe a little too long the more I do think about it. This movie comes in around 2 hours. I think you probably could have made around about a good hour 45-minute movie of it. I think you could probably cut out maybe a little bit of the 2003 segment, because I do think that part probably does go on a little long. This is the part where we're slowly starting to see the BlackBerry go from like being a popular phone to the most popular phone that it was for like for a good 4 years until the iPhone came around. Yeah, there are some funny moments, like you do see Jim just go from company to company, getting all their engineers and essentially stealing their engineers, which is what kind of gets them into legal trouble. But at the same time, this part does probably go on a little too long. And if I were to cut out some things, that's probably where you maybe could have edited out some portions. And yeah, like I said, I just really like the small nature of the story. I really like how funny this movie felt. I do think it does have a really, really good sense of humor. Yeah, if I were to give this movie a score on the Cinemaster review scale, yeah, I would give it an 8.5. This is a great movie, and I think it does everything it's trying to accomplish mostly really well. Again, there are some nitpicks. It doesn't quite maybe reach like the insane heights that a movie like this could reach, like something like Air did. But I still think it's a really, really great movie. If you have the time this weekend, I would really, really recommend, or if you have the time this week and you didn't check this out, I would really recommend you see this. And the second, if you're not going to see it in theaters, the second it comes on stream, my gosh, check this movie out, because it is really, really good. And I promise it's worth your time. Movies like these sometimes go under the radar. You maybe think like, am I really invested in the origin of the BlackBerry phone? Like, that doesn't sound interesting. But this movie makes you care with how well it's edited. It's edited really, really well. And just how it tells its story. Yeah, I think this is a really, really fun movie. But yeah, because we're obviously pre-recorded this week, we don't really have any questions or comments. So I'm just going to say thank you all for watching this pre-recorded episode of Cinemaster's Reviews. Remember to like this video. It really, really helps out a lot. Subscribe to the video store. We have a ton of great shows coming out every day, essentially, at this point. And they're all just a great way to just celebrate movies. It's why I love this channel so much. Is it just gives us all a great outlet to share why we love movies in different ways. Next Thursday, not this Thursday, but next Thursday, the Video Store Movie Club episode 3. Once again, we are covering the non-Matrix Wachowski films. Jake uttered The Matrix earlier, but we are going to be covering Bound, Speed Racer, and Cloud Atlas. So that's going to be a really, really fun show. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Next week, we are going to be reviewing Fast X and one other movie. I'm going to have to check the schedule, but I'll be posting a thumbnail very, very soon to let you guys know what we'll be covering. But until then, see you all next time.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.